Hello, welcome to the Diablo 3 podcast. We are online at diablo8gamers.com. We should probably call it the Reaper of Souls podcast, except I always forget if it's called what the ROS stands for. What does ROS stand for, Xanth?
Reaper of Sleep at this point.
And what does ROS stand for to you, Rankil?
Random of stamping. I don't know. It's this is bad. Souls,
Yeah, we had our
Souls of the Reaping.
Raper of Seals, yes, it's
Yeah.
the Walrus expansion pack. We should have had better opening lines there. Anyway, it's obviously I'm host Flux, and Rankil is a guest, and also Xanth.
Ahoy
Greetings.
hoy.
And we are going to talk about we are all in the Reaper of Souls beta because we're cool, and you're probably not, so you're not in the Reaper of Souls beta.
There you
But
go.
if you are, then you should be on the podcast too, because we may have another guest joining us later, because Rankil has to run off and do something else in a little bit, and you haven't been on at all yet in the beta, Rankil. So we'll give you first talk here in a second. But basic topics we're going to get to here: legendary items, quality of that, obtainability, some fun crafting, some stuff on gameplay, bounty hunting, Nephilim rifts, and builds which you're playing with in the beta. If you tried new builds and what characters you like best and stuff, kind of trying to stick to major topics and not get too much into minutia on things, although that never actually works out that way. But you have not been on the beta since the you have not been on the podcast since the beta started, Randkill. What have you been? You've been playing a lot. You've been streaming. How is it experience for you on the whole?
Yeah, I've been playing a lot and streaming. And yeah, pretty much I've played every single class. I dabbled a little bit in hardcore and stuff, but it's kind of the whole thing of like you go through hardcore and then a character dies and you're just like, oh crap, and then you just play another character. So I've tried keeping most of my focus on playing softcore characters, mainly for testing of different builds and things like that. Just basically trying to break the game. But I'd probably say
And
that
so you played a lot of self found in Diablo 3. Are you
yeah,
still doing self found in Reaper of Souls? Oh wait,
yeah, everybody is.
yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, and it's interesting too, coming from a cell phone perspective and playing in the beta and seeing, how much better, kind of in a way, the loot that you're getting in there. It's very much it had that feeling of the console feel, but with the bind on account stuff, that's where it adds in that little kind of mix to it. And I mean, I'm enjoying it. I think it's actually really good, and I think the way it makes sense where you can trade rares, which rares are still pretty good, at least in this patch, because the legendary drop rates kind of stink. But rares can still be pretty good, and it's a lot cheaper for you to re-roll the affixes on them at the Mystic as opposed to legendaries. But yeah, I mean, you can get a pretty good character baseline from rare items, which I think is good because you get a lower baseline that you could trade up to, but everything else that you need to get beyond that, you actually need to go and actually kill monsters instead of sitting on forums and begging people for trades and things like that. It just makes kind of sense that if you want to develop your character beyond a certain point, then you go kill stuff. So I'm liking it.
So you mentioned hardcore, Xanth. Are you still playing all hardcore in the beta, and how's that going for you?
It's going relatively well. I mean, still hardcore.
You're still all hardcore?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, since the newest patch, I haven't had any character die, but at the same time, I haven't really been like I'm not putting it up to Torment 6 and seeing what happens. I've mainly been playing Crusader and then kind of just slowly leveling up every other character after that. I've actually found myself playing less and less as of late with this most recent patch, just because it actually has felt a little more discouraging in terms of like just there's a lot of those bugs that are out there that really kind of hinder your, I guess, want to kind of jump in and farm a little bit. And I'm sure there are people out there who would, be dying for a beta that would be upset to hear me say that. But at the same time, I've just kind of been logging in less and less because I've kind of found myself hitting a gear wall where any sort of upgrade is few and far between. And I've actually found myself just checking the guild um, roster and seeing what other people have looted. As I log in each day, and even that is so sparse it kind of makes me sad.
Yeah, people who don't know the guild thing, when you're in a guild, whenever anyone else loots a legendary or set item, it gives a little pop up. Everybody in the guild gets a message who's online then. And you can look, and when you get on there, sort of the guild chat, you can see announcements and stuff, and you see what people have found. And I've been taking a lot of screenshots of those for news updates. It's useful, but Usually it's just a Zappa fan on there finding 50 things a day because he plays like a million hours, or else he's very lucky. But
Right, right. I took advantage of the Rakanoth exploit. I ran all my characters through Rakanoth and got the free legendary you get because it's bugged where after you kill any end boss, you're supposed to get a legendary and that one happens to be bugged. So I just ran all my characters through and that's the most amount of legendaries I've seen in this entire patch.
so you're a cheater.
Yeah, in some ways. I just wanted to see if it worked in that.
So you said you weren't playing because of bugs, but apparently the only thing you like is the bug.
Well,
And by bugs, do you mean the fact that legendary items don't drop anymore?
what
I don't think that's a bug. I think that's supposed to be that way.
Well, I mean, like obviously they've mentioned that legendary crafting plans are bugged at the moment, where they're dropping too frequently, which is affecting other drop rates in tandem, with the rifts in and of themselves, the rift bags not dropping legendaries like they're supposed to either. Um, so those kind of things, it kind of takes a little bit of the fun out of it because I really, really like rifts, and I know we're going to cover it later on, but without that incentive to kind of go in there, it's been kind of null and void for me.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way where I've actually, I started out because I primarily play the Witch Doctor. That's the first guy that I play through. And then after that, I kind of started bleeding into other classes. But it definitely, the rate of the legendaries that you were getting this patch was way toned down from the friends and family portion
Right.
of it. And from there, though, it's kind of like you get to a point, you get a few items, and you go, okay, you can either sit and farm normal bags, which is kind of the thing right now because that's like one of the most efficient ways to get legendaries, or you end up just doing pretty much it seems about doing like rift farming in Torment 1 just to get item drops and consistent density of guys. But still, even the drop rates for those are, it's pretty low. And you even where you're talking about like different bugs, I mean, there's things like there was the shrine bug, which I never got in on that, which was it was a bracers that whenever you clicked on a shrine, it spawned an elite pack. But guys found out that you could lag out your game and then run like auto hotkey scripts or whatever that would click the shrine like 1,000 times and spawn the entire screen worth of guys, and they were farming Torment 6 with this. But like if you spawned so many guys, it ended up killing all the like a lot of the new guys that were spawning on the screens. So they were pretty much getting Torment 6 level loot and getting it at a rate that was just beyond of anything that you should realistically be getting in the game. And I didn't get in on that because I personally I think it's like you see a lot of these people who are streaming them and they go out and they find something and they find a bug and then they're just running that bug to the ground, and they're doing it for just days or weeks on end. And then to me it's like we're doing this as a beta test and you're testing things to find out what's not working, and then you find it's not working, you verify it, you report it, and then you move on to the next thing kind of thing. But like there's some people in there that are still just trying to like farm stuff, and to me it's like I'm not really in this in the beta test. I'm trying to break the game for them so that hopefully these things aren't there when the game goes live, which is kind of a good thing, I guess, that they're doing this as opposed to you look back to the Diablo 3 beta. It's like something like this wouldn't have been caught during, a limited Diablo 3 type beta as opposed to the Reaper of Souls beta. So I'm kind of glad that they have all this stuff in there and that we're catching these things, because these would be definitely some game breakers on the if they were allowed to be on release.
Yeah, you look at the early hotfixes, the D3 after launch, and it was all these, treasure goblins being removed from spawning points and guaranteed golden chests being removed and stuff. That is exactly the same thing people are doing now. I do find it funny what you say that people are, it is a beta test and all the items are going to go away when they wipe the servers or when the beta ends or both. And yet it's like, hey, I'll spend 6 hours farming items for this character when they're not real and they're all going to be gone in a month.
Yeah, I
It's
think
like,
I think the only
is that really
thing
what your time is? It the best way to spend your
I
time?
think the only thing is really it's because there's a lot of like the six-piece bonuses for some of the six-piece sets are really insane. And the only way, at least with this patch, is by doing the only people I know that have gotten, a six-piece set bonus are the people who had been doing the shrine bug farming. So it's kind of like there's a point of where they have what we're doing also is I guess they're saying like coming soon within the next week or so, or Blizzard soon, who knows when it is, but
April.
yeah.
April is Blizzard soon.
And
And the next beta patch will be actually a week
yeah.
after release.
And so they're saying that there's another beta patch that they don't even know for sure if they're going to wipe everything. But based off of like the kind of people who are doing the shrine bug and getting a bunch of extra items, it's kind of like, who knows if all of your stuff that you have right now is going to get wiped. So that's why I'm kind of just more or less playing other classes and even playing a little bit less, instead of playing every day, I'm playing kind of like every other day or something. But yeah, I mean, I think right now they're at a point where they need to go through and patch stuff. I mean, there's definitely some imbalances of things. The way to play, there's kind of no incentive to get to a higher level, but I think that's all because of it's kind of like there's people who are now getting on this bandwagon of saying that they want to do free trading as opposed to the bind an account, whereas people thought bind an account was a good idea, but that's because they've played on the PTR, they see horrible drop rates, and they're like, this is garbage. But coming from me as a self-found character, this is basically what I saw playing self-found with the auction house sitting there. It's just that you're getting all of these bad drops, and people are so used to the auction house to facilitate their characters. But if they do balance this bind an account and legendary drops, then realistically you shouldn't need to trade with other people. But it's just that when you end up getting such terrible drops and you don't see what you kind of want to see within a reasonable amount of time, then that's where you feel like you need to trade in order to get better items and things like that. But I mean,
Yeah, I would totally agree with you. In the friends and family, I was playing and finding decent stuff. I wasn't, and I think the big thing about the friends and family drop rates was the Crusader farming bug. I think really kind of exacerbated the whole situation because you had people who were really exploiting that, and then it made legendaries raining from the sky. And I know the friends and family rate was already pretty high, but when you add in that exploit, it looks worse. But from the person who wasn't using that exploit, was just kind of slowly going through, and the regular 1 to 70 on hardcore, playing my Crusader without using the exploit, and having fun. That felt right. There wasn't a point during the friends and family where I was like, man, I really wish I could trade with somebody, because I wasn't immediately overpowered. I found a couple of items that I really liked, and I also was looking forward to finding more. Whereas in this patch, it's kind of the exact opposite, where I can think of maybe one. No, I haven't even found a set item in this patch, and I played a lot more. Um, and I haven't even found a Crusader flail from any difficulty from 1 to 70. And just those little things where it's like I've still been using a rare weapon, or something like that gets discouraging, where you want to seek out those avenues for trading. And to be honest, like I said, going back to the friends and family, I never once felt like that. So I'm really hoping that in the future patch they can find that middle ground between an exacerbated loot system and the current drop level that we're at, because I was having fun. I had way more fun in the friends and family that I've had right now, and I'd like to kind of get back to that.
Well, given what always happens with the podcast, we record one, and the next day a patch comes out that makes everything we just said irrelevant.
Right.
So,
yeah,
pretty
probably.
good odds we'll see the patch Monday morning, first thing, or possibly Tuesday. However long I take to edit this and post it, it will always be 5 minutes too long. It's like one of those curses in an RPG where there's always one more zombie than you can handle.
Yeah.
Right.
It's always a little quicker. Okay, maybe not, but we'll find out. But a question. So, are legendaries that big an upgrade over rares at this point? You mentioned earlier, Rankill, that I mean, it seems like the legendaries are
Um,
obviously better. They have higher stats a little bit, but they're not that different. You're just kind of hoping the orange property, the ones that have them anyway, is going to be something that makes a
yeah,
difference.
this patch was definitely is a big change actually between the friends and family version and this patch, because they also, one-handed weapons are rolling up to like 3600 DPS, and now they're rolling up to like 20 to 2300 DPS. Um, and then the difference even between rare items, you were getting like 500 main stat on a rare item, and you're getting 1,000 on a legendary item. So legendaries were like above and beyond more powerful than a rare item. Whereas now they've kind of toned everything back. So, rares are rolling up to like 615 if you get a good enough affix roll on it. And then legendaries are rolling kind of like a 7. This is for like if you're looking at like a one hander or something, or like a shoulder or whatever it is. But like
We're
then,
talking about stats.
yeah. And then the main stat or whatever would roll up to like a 750 or something like that for a legendary item. So it's an upgrade. It's not huge compared to what it was before, but it definitely is that eventually, it's that where Travis Day was talking about they want everyone to be in legendary items. So even if you have a legendary item that has a terrible affix on it, or the legendary affix, but it still has all of the affixes that you want with the stats at least, and they're going to pretty much roll better than what you get on a rare item. So you'd be wearing that legendary item over a rare anyway. But
And the orange stat does make a big difference if you get ones that actually matter.
no, I mean there are.
My monk has got the God, what's the helm you always find in D3?
And Dariel's Visage.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and Dariel's, which no longer has IAS on it, which sucks, but it casts a poison nova every time you hit something,
yeah,
which is like 5 times a second. And I've got the shoulder pads that cast the fan of knives every time, like every 20. I think it's 20% chance of casting that for like 200% weapon damage. And those make a really big difference. I mean, even above whatever the rares would be, just because every second I'm casting out a fan of knives and casting poison novas 10 times a second, and those proc off like your cyclone tornadoes and stuff. So it's just nonstop this sort of green blur around your character, and it's not a very big damage thing, but it does, it makes a considerable difference over time. It's almost like adding splash damage or
yeah.
something.
Yeah, no, I mean there were a lot of, especially I mean because I saw a lot more with the friends and family stuff, but I mean things like example of I think it's the Renho Flayer. It's a ceremonial knife for a witch doctor, and it makes your plague of toads homing, and then they have a chance to explode twice, and like that's an actual that's an item that I've been trying to find all throughout this one and hoping that I had gotten it, and I have not seen it yet, and it's kind of one of those things that like it's only going to drop if I play my Witch Doctor too, so I feel bad playing other classes because I know that I won't have that chance, or a very low chance because it could, you can get a ceremonial knife while you're playing a monk, but it's going to be like that, that small 0.5% chance or something of rolling off-spec loot because most everything that you're rolling is towards your class. But, I mean, it's hard though, is because the last patch we got a whole bunch of them, so you could test a bunch of these affixes and see which ones were good and which ones were bad or which ones were overpowered. But it seems in this one, because not too many are rolling, there are a few that are pretty overpowered. Like there's that mace that's the basically an 8% life crushing blow mace, which I've seen people are now one-shotting Torment 6 bosses with it because it's kind of bugged on the way it calculates the damage. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, just in kind of like some other ones, like the Wizard Spike is kind of the new flavor of the beta patch. Anyone who has a channeled ability with a Wizard Spike, it channels like a stream of frozen orbs out of your character as opposed to a single proc. But I think that issue is actually it's dealing with procking on channeling abilities, and it's not necessarily the proc itself of the weapon. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've seen that there's a lot of them that are powerful, but the few that I have gotten, most of them have gone towards shards or the Forgotten Souls to reforge a stat on an item because I feel that was more powerful, or just trying to craft. I've been trying to do a bit more crafting since we've been getting a zillion of these crafting plans, but and it's kind of nice to do crafting because you can build the item, and then if you don't like what you got, you just disenchant it. It gives you back the Forgotten Soul, and then as long as you have that legendary crafting material, you can just make another one. So it's kind of like you can do this constant feedback loop of, make a legendary item and then salvage it if you don't like it, and then just remake another one until you get the stats that you want, which is in a way cheaper than trying to re-roll a single affix on it.
And so that'll be a question to you then, Xanth, about crafting. But of course, you also need the base item, the base white item now, which could be a pain to find.
Yeah.
When you're making, and you don't get orange properties on sets, although you do get set bonuses.
Yeah.
So have you done much crafting, Xanth, and how is that working out for you?
Minimal. I got my hands on a cane set. So
So you like Magda.
right, absolutely.
Yeah, I did about 40 Magda runs in the past week looking for that stupid butterfly in a jar material from her.
Inadvertently, had done that quest for a bounty a couple of times, and I had a couple of the regions in my stash. So I got a chance to actually craft up a few of the Kane's helmets, and I have one set of Kane's pants that I've crafted. But the really frustrating part of the whole process is how absolutely random the rolls end up being. And without the orange or anything like that, I think the first Kane's helm I made had no main stats at all. No socket, no main stats. And it was just complete garbage. And you think of all the steps that you go through to create this thing, and what you end up getting is something that is completely not usable. I think that's where the frustration comes in. especially when you're not finding that many legendaries to even kick this off. And then when you do find one and it's garbage, you put it into a Forgotten Soul, and what you craft up is actually just as bad, if not as worse, than what you originally created. I really do feel like there's a huge amount of potential in crafting legendaries because you have the farmability of it. That you have all these regions that are scattered all around, Sanctuary that you would be going and trying to find. But if the end result isn't something that's better than what you currently have, there's no point to do it. So, like, I really feel like, at least with the crafted legendaries, they're missing the boat just a little bit. Um, you know, if you have to go in and work up, some guaranteed stats that are going to help make these, if anything, just a little bit better than rares, but not as good as the found legendaries, then you've got potential. But the way it is right now, I think I crafted one set of Kane's pants that were decent, and I was just like, okay, I'm done. I really don't feel the need to kind of go back and keep trying to craft.
Yeah, there's a
But you need 3 of Kane's set to get the big bonuses, though.
Right, but at the same time, like knowing that would also mean I would have to craft up two more pieces that would actually be usable. And so far, I haven't had that luck.
Yeah, there's some legendaries though, which they're not marked that have like legendary affix. Like I made it was the two-handed axe and has a fireball proc on it. That's an actual, it comes with a legendary affix. So I don't think that they're necessarily done, with the crafting system because this is, in the Friends and Family there was no crafting patterns, really. I mean there were some, but they weren't dropping enough to really for us to see what they have. And a lot of these are some of them don't even have a legendary crafting material required for him. It's just two of those. It has like two actual portraits of the Death's Breath that it has for it. So it's like it requires two of them, but it has a one and a one, next to each other. So it's kind of like it might require a legendary item, but it doesn't. And there's a few other ones too. Like there's the Pendergrass gloves. They have a potential of actually rolling. Well, there actually is a seventh property on it. It's not highlighted like a legendary, but they also I've seen them roll 6 primary stats on them. So I don't know if that's how they're supposed to be, or is it something that they're just bugged that way. Um, it's just kind of I feel that they put it in there and they just haven't figured out what they want crafting the final end to be. And I mean I think it's okay. I actually had made there was a YouTube video I had made about because it feels really strange. I mean, I like the fact that they made white and blue items worthwhile. I really like actually white items as the base. I'm fine with that. Because it actually makes you like, okay, I got to go out and find this ceremonial knife to go make the ceremonial knife, and you actually are like looking for these white items and holding on to them in your bank for when you make when you're trying to make an item or an armor. But the part that really I think stinks is the common scraps or whatever, and like the blue items, because you look at it like right now in Diablo 3, like you're only picking up really like rares and legendaries, or, depending if you're getting so many drops of legendaries, you might only be picking up legendaries. And you're not picking up, in any of those white or blue items that you're picking up just to salvage are taking up inventory space for you to pick up what could be potentially upgrades or something that, you would need for it. And I think, in the next patch, they say that they're making it because right now the way how I got blue crafting materials was going to a vendor and finding one of the things that had the cheapest, belt for sale and filling up my inventory with belts and then going and salvaging belts. And then the same thing for white items. You find one of those wandering vendors and they have white items for sale. I just bought up an entire inventory of white items and then did the same thing to salvage for their materials. So it was like I wasn't really doing what they intended to do. But now they made it so the next one, so you're not going to be getting crafting materials. You won't be able to salvage vendor bought items. But I hope that they go through and at least change the requirements for the materials because, to be honest, it's too much. And like you're running out of materials faster than you can really replenish them on a way. Otherwise, what we're going to be doing is going to town and coming back because we're literally picking up everything on the ground because we need to salvage everything. And it would be really annoying that way, I think.
No, I would agree with you on that. I've actually found myself doing those exact same things. So um, no disagreement from myself.
Yeah, so that was my next question. Inventory space, and there's like 20 different legendary materials, about 19 of which have a red blop of blood for a graphic right now.
Yeah.
hopefully they're going to be adding some more item
Yeah,
graphics there.
Griswold scribblings that are blood, or things
Yeah,
like that.
everything is everything just this blood blob. I
Yeah.
mean, not everything, but I have at least like 15 of them right now. But obviously that's just a graph. That's just a beta thing. But yeah, and then of course you have to save extra white items up because you need ascended pants or whatever to make the Kane's pants and that kind of stuff. And it seems like it's just I don't have a sense of how rare all the materials are in terms of how much which recipes need them. I mean, some of them are only in like one. There's like one two-handed legendary axe that uses this one property, this one material. It's like who's ever going to really hunt for that just for this one axe? Other ones seem like they're in multiple recipes, but I haven't found every recipe in the game yet, so obviously I can't look at them across the board, and they're still changing that stuff.
Yeah.
So that's going to be kind of tricky to balance. And of course, they're all BOA, and even in game, I think they really should allow you to trade those in game, like when you find regular legendaries,
Yeah, the same thing with like the patterns. I mean, the patterns were kind of annoying to where you can't even trade
and
the
you just throw it
patterns.
away.
Yeah.
You have an extra, you just throw it away. You can't do anything with it. You
Yeah.
can't even you drop it on the
You
ground, it
can
just lies
sell
there
them, but they're
forever.
it's like 600 or 300 gold or
Yeah,
something, which
I
is
mean that's
insignificant. But yeah.
but and so another, I mean, yeah. So just generally speaking, you're going to be saving that stuff up, and many people have pointed out, stash space. You want to save all these different legendaries that have, unique properties that only work with one build, which maybe you're not doing it now, but you want to at some point. And you've got 20 new kinds of materials and lots more crafting stuff, and you need to save white items. So we all just assumed all along that back in the D3 beta we had 5 tabs of inventory. Like, oh, they're just going to add one, then they cut it to 3, and we all just said, of course, they'll just add 4 in the first expansion and 5 in the second. And here we are in the first expansion, and we're still at 3 tabs. And is this going to become a critical issue over time?
I think it is because, coming from playing Cellfound, I had my entire inventory was always filled with crap, and I actually ended up buying a second account just to, store materials because I was running out of, mule space and everything else that I had when you don't have access to an auction house to easily go say, it's like, oh, I need this crafting materials or I need that. No, you're storing, it's the same thing even with like legendary affixes. You're like, oh, this is a cool legendary affix for, say my demon hunter. He might not use it right now, but I'm going to hold on to it because if I get these other 2 items, that'll synergize really well with it, and you don't want to smash it. So now you're like storing for every single character and all this other stuff. Like something that I had thought, which I mean, I don't know if they would do it, but you would have kind of, I hate to mention, always other games and stealing ideas from them, but it's always the, what do they say about the stealing or something? It's the sincerest form of flattery, whatever. But like Torchlight 2, they have a shared stash, which is all of your characters, and then there's like a single character stash. So, I was thinking of ways of I'm on my Witch Doctor, and I don't need to have in my main stash all my Witch Doctor items. It's kind of like I need just a, single stash or something for like specific Witch Doctor items. Now it'd be a different story, I guess, for hardcore because if that hardcore character dies, you shouldn't really have access to that single stash. So it makes you really think of like what to put into that one. So it would really screw over kind of hardcore characters. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, really, just in general, that adds one stash tab per character then at that point, as opposed to just one more generic. Because I think even if they added 1 or 2 stash tabs, I mean, they'll eventually be filling them up without having an auction house. So
Right. I think, with the current situation, it harks back to Diablo 2, in which you were, creating mule characters. I mean, I know I have a few that I just toss stuff on that I don't intend to play, but I'm starting to run out of space. Uh,
And that Diablo 2 stash was really big too. It was like 6 by 4, I think.
yeah,
I mean, you could put like 5 sets of armor in that
I
thing.
don't know. It was
yeah, and then
impressive.
then it's the same problem still, like you're saying with the legendary crafting materials. If you're storing these up and you've got 20 different ones, I mean, you can think of like I've seen the posts where people are suggesting of having different levels of rift stones or something like that. So now you're going to have, if someone say they did something like that, now you have 10 different levels of rift stones that are going to be in your, in your inventory. It's like it gets a bit ridiculous based off of even gem levels and stuff like that. So I mean, you don't know really right now because obviously we're still in beta. It's not they haven't come out to say like, okay, this is basically release. Now what do you really think that we need to do with everything else on this? But definitely stash space is an issue. And a lot of people are always like when I'm streaming, people are like, oh, don't get an extra stash tab, and I'm like, yep, you don't. So it's like, well, how do you deal with that? And it's like, you make a mule character, but in my case, I make softcore characters and hardcore characters. So that's already my 12 character slots, which is why I'm buying the digital deluxe edition because I get another 3 character slots. So, but to me, it's probably going to be like mules and ladder characters, if they do come out with ladder. So we'll see how that goes.
And you've got 2 accounts, so there's that.
Yeah, well, I can't. The thing is, I can't trade the bind on account items, to
Yeah,
those
that's a
to
problem.
that second account. The only thing I can trade are really going to be kind of like rare items that I might upgrade on another character. But I
You
mean,
should go all hardcore and all softcore on your 2 accounts, obviously, right?
yeah. Well,
Of
that
course,
was
of course you have 20 hardcore characters, that's a problem.
yeah. Well, that's the thing with
Like,
hardcore is like
well,
I
I mean,
always
Xanth has 20 dead hardcore witch doctors just with one class.
yeah.
So
Well, like a lot of
It's
times I found out as I would make a witch doctor, at max level, and then like when I was playing with friends or something, I would do that. But kind of in an off time, I would level up a second character so that in the event that I did die on that character, because I expect it to happen probably at some point in time, then I can jump over back to another character and just re-gear him back up and say, hey, I'm back up to 60 instead of like, oh crap, guys, you got to power level me now through, or something else like that. So it's kind of more I do it to lessen the burden on my hardcore friends as opposed to just having everybody just power level, and for the next 7 or 8 hours they're going to be power leveling me to 60 again.
okay, next topic. Yeah, of course. Also in Diablo 2, you had a limited stash base, but you could make all the accounts you wanted. And I
Yeah.
had probably 15 Diablo 2 accounts with 80% of which were mules. But that's not an option here unless you want to buy more games and make Bobby's eyes twinkle.
Yeah.
So the other gameplay, what we're doing in the game. Obviously, we've mentioned bounty hunting a little bit, Nephilim rifts. Is there any reason to ever play campaign mode once you get through Act 5? Should there be? Should they add incentives, higher density, better EXP, something, or do you think it's just fine being in bounties and Nephilim rifts forever, Xanth?
I I really don't think they need to incentivize campaign. I think one of the biggest complaints, we had about gameplay was the repetitive nature of it. I mean, I think that's going to be a guarantee no matter what, but like the being forced to run the same couple of quests and the, kind of being pigeonholed into the same areas, um, is it's frustrating. I've actually really, really like the bounty system, and I really, really like the Nephilim rifts. And aside from the loot system, I've been completely fine to just do those. In fact, every Crusader that I've leveled, I've done strictly on the bounty and rift system because it's actually more exciting. It's a little more diverse. I'm not running the same things constantly. And it spices things up, and it's refreshing in that regard. Um,
Why do you hate the Diablo 3 quest designers?
it's
All that work they've done, and you don't ever want to see it again.
it's not that I hate them. It's
What about the epic struggle of Kane's survival against the Butterfly Queen? You don't miss that part?
the fact that I can bypass Asmodan monologuing continuously.
You don't miss the 7 stage hologram taunting session?
No,
Oh, that's too bad.
and I don't miss hearing about terror. So it's kind of nice in that it's kind of like reading a book, right? You choose to read a book once, and if you've enjoyed it, you go back to it, and you can reread the parts that you've really enjoyed. That's how I kind of view campaign mode. I will play it through just to hear the story. But when you then kind of have that book forced on you daily, for every time you want to, enjoy something, that's where it gets frustrating because you already know the story. I don't need to hear these people talking again and again and again. And what we really enjoyed about the game was the combat and being able to, kill monsters and to be able to bypass the campaign and get right down to the meat and potatoes of what this game is awesome. So I don't think you need to incentivize it because if you incentivize it, then you're going to push more people to going back to something that we already were complaining about. Because if it's even marginally more effective at getting loot or anything else, we're going to do it, and that's almost more frustrating. Is if it is more effective, then we're not going to play with these new tools that they've given us. Um, and we're just
Is it all just a way to get people to upgrade? Since you don't get adventure mode in Diablo 3, you have to buy Reaper of Souls to get it.
I I
That's your incentive is to buy the expansion, I guess.
I guess I don't get the argument from a lot of people like who are frustrated about not having immediately every feature if they don't upgrade. Like maybe I just don't understand the logic. Like it's been about 2 years since the game came out. It's not that expensive, and like, should you necessarily get everything, handed to you? Like, should you just be able to go back and continue playing with Loot 2.0 and just be content? Like,
Don't you teach high school in real life?
I do.
Isn't the
Like,
entitlement syndrome of modern humans
I
manifestly
mean,
obvious in every interaction at your workspace?
truth be told, I work with more at-risk students, so we don't have as much entitlement. But I have worked with kids, who have entitlement issues. But I don't know. I guess I never really understood the argument. Like, I was going to buy the expansion because it's going to be a better game. It's just going to be more entertaining.
I just
But
find it strange that people say, they want to go through and farm. Well, for one, they're going on the PTR with these characters that are, greatly advanced by the auction house. Where really, the PTR is really kind of to test like the 1 to 60 even, or like the, type game. And it's actually pretty good for leveling up to 60. It's just that it's not designed around a character geared around the auction house. So these people are coming in there with, 300 DPS characters and they're like, this is too easy. And it's like, well, if you realize that when you're leveling up a character, you're not going to have 300,000 DPS at level 60, then, it's actually more challenging. And I mean, there are a few things, it's like someone who just, refuses to buy the expansion, they want to still be able to like play their characters or something. And I mean, who knows, maybe they make, with ladders or something, then it becomes viable. But, it's like you were saying with campaign mode. If they make campaign mode, and I feel that Blizzard wants us to do adventure mode. They don't want us to be farming in campaign mode. Campaign mode is just to see the storyline, go, okay, that's cool, and then now it's go under farming mode and adventure mode. But like you said, and it's the same thing that you see in the beta, whatever is the least, the least effort that you need in order to get the most reward out of it, people are going to be doing that. Much like, people are still abusing exploits on the beta right now to farm items. They're still, when they had those shrine gloves, they're all going to do the shrine gloves, or like normal bag farming. Everyone's going to do what is the easiest way to get the most reward out of it, which is what I find humorous about things even like endless dungeons, because, endless dungeons, you're going to hit a wall at some point where you can't progress. And it's like people aren't going to farm dying over and over again in an endless dungeon. They're going to go back to their like super easy mode of farming whatever it is to get the most legendaries after they've got their kicks out of the challenge mode or something with the game. But I mean, I'd like campaign mode to have something where it feels like you could go and farm, like maybe you do a complete act clear, you always get a guaranteed legendary at the end for those people who want to do like a very long play session. But still what you said is that someone's going to pick that out and say, okay, I can clear an act in 30 minutes and I get this one legendary plus whatever these extra legendaries that I have. Compare it to doing rifts and bounties. You actually get, 1.2 legendaries per hour faster than something else. So everyone's just going to run campaign
right.
mode and no one's going to run.
If
So,
that was the case too, you would have 4 or 5 friends. Everybody would, start farming quickly, and then you would join the person's game who was closest to finishing an act, and so on and so forth.
well,
Um,
you can, no, it actually keeps track because like you can
does
join
it?
someone's game. Well, because like, how it's like defeat an act in less than an hour. You can
Right.
join someone's game at the end of it, and if they get the achievement for it, I'm pretty sure that you don't get the achievement because you
Hmm.
have to physically start on the first quest. So I mean,
Okay.
there's a way that they have, I think, of checking that, but then it stinks because that's more of like a single player experience if you think about it. Like, say you
Right.
just started and you're halfway through, and your friend's like, "Hey, I want to come play with you." They're not going to come play with you in campaign mode because they won't get the reward at the end of it. And that's
Right.
kind of the same thing of where I see these like people are talking about like bringing back Nephilim Valor stacks and make them infinitely stack and all this other stuff. It's like, no, you like, and that's what I like about them removing Nephilim Valor is that I can jump around and go into a game and someone's even, even the same thing, I guess, with bounties, like I miss, like someone's been farming 2 bounties, already, and I come into the game and 2 are complete. Well, if I finish the last 3, I still get the reward at the end of it. But
Right.
it's nice because I feel okay for joining a game because I'm still going to get the reward for it. Yeah, people might exploit it where they're going to have, someone goes in and farms all four for every single one, and the person basically comes in and they turn it in. But it's like, I mean, which along the lines even goes into where like maybe you have to be in for a majority of them, or you actually have to be like physically in the area killing some certain monsters. I don't know. I mean, there's kind of going to be some ways that people are going to exploit it, but you're talking like, multiple amounts of people. Like to me, it seems like the big exploits of things to do are things that you can do in a group of four or less, which, is partially of why I don't like at least bounties when you're doing normal, is that everybody just goes off, at least on normal bounties, even in Torment 1s now, because we've got good enough gear, everybody just splits up and they run their own, some people, one person will run in Act 1, then another in Act 2, Act 3, and Act 4. And then once everybody's complete there, then they just kind of bleed over into Act 5, you complete the quest. So basically in the time it takes you to, kill an act solo by yourself, you've actually completed 5, bounties worth of ways. And I don't know if making them so that everybody stays together as a group, because even when I join public games with bounties, there's like the Crusader that is 6 screens ahead of everybody else that's just trying to find, the champion guy or whatever. And it seems like it's always just like this rush to get to the guys. And I don't know if they need to make, kind of in a way of killing more monsters or something with it, because I feel bounties are very not group friendly, I think, because everyone kind of just, it's like a mad scramble. It's like an Easter egg hunt type thing.
Right.
It's like
I would.
they set everybody off and they go find the guy. And then while they're doing it, they're killing some guys along the way, but everyone's just looking for that ping on their map, to try
Right.
and find the guy. And that's why I like rifts, because rifts you do as a group and everybody is pretty much grouped up and nobody's going ahead of the group or something else, But unless, of course, I've seen also Crusaders, they run ahead and they just try and find the pylons. And then once they get the overpowered pylon, they kill all the guys around them and then just horse on to the next pylon and then keep doing that. And they'll be like 2 levels deeper than everybody else at times or something. But I honestly, I think that the horse is a bit too much. I mean, it's really good for them to have a good movement speed, but I think it is way overtuned compared to everything else. And it makes them a very antisocial, like if people thought Wrath of the Berserker Barbarians were bad, like being in a group with a Crusader who has the steed charge is just beyond worse than, what a Crusader, than a Barbarian was rather with Wrath of Berserker. So, but I mean,
Yeah, you covered my next 7 questions in that monologue, so I'm trying to. Obviously the bounty rewards are an issue where people can just sit in town and get them, or as you say, you can be in all 4 different acts. I
yeah.
think you need to be in the same area or the same proximity or something, or else you just don't get the reward. It
Yeah.
just seems. I mean, that's just cheesy. Even aside, I mean, it's kind of cool if you get a big area. You get one in, I don't know, Fields of Misery or something.
Mhm.
Right.
And it's nice you can split up a little bit to try to find it in this huge area, but it is cheesy to be in different acts and still getting the rewards. So that seems like something
Well,
they definitely
the
need to
one thing
fix.
that I find strange about that, though, is that so if everybody is still split apart, and you're in a zone, as far as, and Paragon leveling for experience has been god awful in the,
Oh,
you know,
it's abysmal.
yeah, and everyone, and it's funny because everyone's like, "Oh, what should I do to prepare?" And then, and I'm always making posts and saying, "Level your Paragon experience now." And they're like, "No, you're going to gain so much more." I'm like, "You don't understand. It's like 5 to 6 times slower, when I'm farming in like mid, lower torment levels. It's not until you get to like torment 5 and 6 maybe that it starts actually equaling to what you can get at a level set, as a level 60 character on MP10." And it's like, I mean, and that's kind of the things with like bounties, though, is that if everybody's splitting up, you're kind of more or less just killing the stuff that's on the screen around you. So you're not gaining as much of an experience benefit. But they can't adjust the experience based off of bounties, because then when you run rifts, you're going to get absurd amount of experience because everybody's on the same screen. So I don't know, and it's even the same thing, I guess, of creating games, because right now you just kind of join games and it's whatever you're in. Like they might be doing bounties or they might be doing rifts, but you don't know. It's not like you have that selection of it that like, okay, I'm just running bounties or I'm just running rifts like you used to before, for monster slaying and brawling and key runs or whatever it is. But yeah, definitely the experience gains need to be tweaked, because I mean, the whole time that I've been playing, and I think this patch, I've put in maybe probably like a couple hundred hours, I bet, and maybe even more, and I've only gained, I think, 5 Paragon levels. I think out of it, I went from like a Paragon level 88 to like 93. That's basically like the difference that I've gotten of of all the characters that I've played. And it's absurd. Like I shouldn't, for that much, I should have gotten a lot more experience, um, than I.
Well, that's 5 more than I've gotten,
Yeah,
so
I'm at
I haven't gone up at
600.
all in
Yeah.
this patch.
Yeah, I mean it's so slow. Like it's more that like when I see that Paragon animation and it comes out and I'm just like, I'm like, holy crap, I got a Paragon level. I'm like, ooh, I can put a point somewhere into something.
Take a screenshot and email it to me. I
Yeah,
Right.
forgot what that looks like.
yeah.
Yeah. It,
Oh, it's
So
it's it's
question,
actually
so
it's
question,
actually bugged too
question.
because the text that comes across the screen is that the standard beta text of like missing something whatever thing or whatever it is. Like there.
Well, no one's seen it but you, so it's okay.
right. Yeah.
So question to you on that, Xanth.
Yeah.
Is the experience too slow? Is it just because we don't get individual character gains anymore?
Eh,
And is that to some extent because it's a beta test and no one's really playing for experience? I mean, I don't have a Ruby in any of my hats anymore.
Yeah. I mean, with it all being grouped together, I think my total Paragon on the second time is like 147 or something like that. Um, Maybe a little less. I don't remember. I have felt no need to even, equip anything to increase my experience gain. But at the same time, I was looking at it, to go from, where I'm at now to another level, and I'm like a half bar at this point from all the playing I've done, and I still feel like it's ages away. I was looking at the numbers, and it's only like maybe I think for that half bar 20 or 30 million experience.
That was like half a game in D3.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Oh yeah, you don't.
So,
And I mean, I looked at stuff too, like in the friends and family. So like when Kriparian was running around, because he was big farming with the Crusader, the bugged, the beam, whatever that was doing 5 or 6 times the damage it should. And I watched him when he was streaming. I figured, and I looked at his bar of his Paragon that he had and how much experience he had, and I calculated. I mean, he was getting in Torment 6 doing basically 6 times the damage that he should have been doing. He was farming and getting anywhere from 300 to 400 million experience an hour, and that's on Torment 6. Dealing 5 to 6 times the amount of damage. So realistically, he was getting 5 to 6 times the amount of experience that he should have been getting, and he was getting just as much as maybe the top people can get on level 60 monster power 10 farming.
right.
So it's kind of like they really do need to balance, and it just I don't feel like I don't feel like getting Paragon points. It's like I'm just kind of like, well, I guess I have what I have. I don't feel like I can actually earn. I mean, I like the fact that they make the account wide Paragon, but it just doesn't feel like there's no there's no incentive to go out and try and get experience, like you said. Like I don't run an experience gem in my helm because it's already abysmal the amount of experience I gain. So
Right.
I don't see a benefit in trying to get it. I know the benefit is there though, because every 200 Paragon levels that you have, you can max out one of those stats in there. So the ideal Paragon that you might see people trying to race towards is going to be that Paragon 800. So you can max out all the other, the second ones or whatever. But as far as the main stat one, you can continue beyond that. But getting a Paragon 800 to me just seems like it's never going to happen at the current rates.
Yeah, it seems,
So
it's considering, I haven't hit 148 from 147. I've never, even in the friends and family, was
yeah,
able to gain a level. Um, it does feel like there should be some sort of tweak on experience gain, or at least one of the big things is addressing, the thing that you see a lot is extra experience gained by monster kill.
hmm
Uh, and that's rolling on a lot of stuff, and that could be potentially great.
yeah.
But I mean,
If
when
you're
it's
getting like a percent gain or something instead of
yeah,
just getting like 20 experience more, and you're like, oh great, on my 100 million experience that I need to get to this next level or something,
I'm
you're
yeah
like, I'm getting 20 more experience per kill. Sweet.
the extra 100 that I gain, courtesy of my weapon or whatever it happens to be, it really feels like a useless stat. Um, and the same thing with, you could argue that with anything in terms of the experience gain when even a percentage, if it's so minimal by comparison,
Yeah.
it definitely it discourages you from wanting to. But to be honest, I think once having a pretty decent Paragon level, I haven't felt the push either because I've already had so many points. It'd
Yeah,
be
and that's kind of the
interesting.
thing.
It'd be interesting,
Each individual point you gain is such a tiny, 0.2% more crit.
right?
Gaining 50 more points makes a huge difference, but each individual point is such a tiny thing, and
Yep.
it's so far between them I don't feel the incentive to push for it.
I mean,
No, not at all.
to me, I think like if I had to figure the best to come into Reaper of Souls, I would figure to have three on live, three Paragon 100 characters because that gives you around it's like Paragon 200. That allows you to max out one stat in each one of those things, which is usually if you're building towards some sort of build, maxing out one of those stats is probably like the best that you could do. Um,
Gold find,
yeah,
max out gold finds the first
and
thing.
but that's the thing is still that's like for me to get up to what I am, with what I have right now, I don't see myself getting to Paragon 200. It's like I don't see the Paragon experience gains that I get from there. It's no longer anything that I have, and it seems more it's just whoever farmed the most in before Reaper of Souls, ends up having the most advantage because they have all these Paragon experience points, and you can't really gain to try and close the gap on anyone on those. So, it is definitely something, and again, we're in a beta, so it could change in whatever it is, but so far it's been 2 patches, and I mean, we've been this far in the beta, and really these patches haven't changed much, and it kind of, with the such soon release date that it is, I'm getting a bit like maybe they bit off a bit more that, by saying that, oh, we're going to release the game a week after the auction house closes. It's kind of like, are you sure, guys? But
Yes, they're sure.
yeah, I mean, they
Well,
are.
we've only had one patch. I mean, we had one patch when the Friends and Family ended, and then they had a month off for Christmas. So hopefully the next one is going to be some big stuff. And then usually, release date when the game goes live, there's some huge patch that makes a lot of stuff
Yeah.
the last month of the beta fixes, basically. But I mean, they have to go gold like 8 weeks before release on these, to get all these international clients and everything finished. All these, releasing it in 17 languages around the
Well, you
world.
got to
So
figure too is that the going gold is still it doesn't matter because you can't play that game by
yeah,
itself what it
that's why you
is.
get
They're
yeah,
just
that's why you
putting
get the
data.
huge launch day
Yeah,
patch.
they're just putting data on a disk and then they're printing it. They're printing them out and shipping it. Like you can't physically play the game. Which is kind of a thing.
It's online only,
I
so yeah,
kind of
Right.
in
you
the
can't
thing
play it anywhere.
I'm bummed. The only thing I'm bummed about the online only is kind of like with Diablo 2. It's like I can go and install Diablo 2 with my original D2 Collector's Edition and have the 1.0 patch and play the game 1.0. But it's like I can't do that kind of in this game because in ways like I wish I could go back to play like the original Inferno sometimes just for that like nostalgic crush your face in type thing. But it's like and you can't do that in this. So but it's still that yeah they'll come out with their gold version or whatever that they have, but it's definitely not. It won't be the final version of the game, because everything's going to get patched up to whatever. But we'll see. Hopefully this new patch comes out next week or by the time people are hearing this, it's already been out. Who knows? So,
Always guaranteed.
yeah, because what was it? Didn't we do the one patch and we were talking about the stuff of like the beta, and then the next day the beta came out or something?
Yeah,
Was it?
every patch,
Yep.
every time they have a patch or anything releases, that always happens.
So
Yeah, did we did a podcast on BlizzCon, and
yeah,
we were remarking how it was strange to not hear anything. It's going to be forever until they actually introduce a beta, and then it was like the next day I got the email. I'm like, oh my God.
yeah. I was kind of like, what?
That's happened like 5 different times. We did a whole podcast about PvP one time, and like the next day they announced brawling. It was like, well, shit, they went everything we just said
Yeah.
before I posted it. So two other things before we get into character stuff,
Okay.
just sort of short things. One thing is someone mentioned earlier was sockets, and I've seen a lot of comments about that's kind of the same thing in Diablo 3 now, where if you don't have a socket in a weapon or a helm, it's essentially a useless item.
Yeah.
Right.
And we figured that would be kind of fixed or changed or improved by enchanting, but it still feels
They
like
made
it's
it
just
worse.
useless without that.
They made it worse, I
Yeah,
think.
and now you have to either use the enchant to get that, or else you have to roll something that has good other stats and no socket, or has a socket and other crappy stats. And like I think Xanth was saying it earlier with the making Kane's helm.
Yeah.
So
Right.
people are saying they should make. I mean, it doesn't really matter. I mean, obviously sockets are useful in armor, and pants and stuff, but it's not totally 100% mandatory the way it feels like in a helm and a weapon.
Right.
So do you think there something that should be changed in that? Should sockets be a secondary stat, or it's always obtainable via enchanting or something, doesn't count toward your normal enchant?
Yeah, I've seen the stuff about like making it always obtainable, and it's kind of it's one of those things of where I think like Wyatt or whoever was saying, and it's like, well, if you're eventually going to get to the point where you're just going to get them anyway, it might as well just roll on the item anyway, because why would you need to go? I mean, but then again, if they made it so like you had a legendary crafting material that you had to get, and then it and then it rolled your sockets or something on an item, and that gave you sockets, but maybe and that only is going to be for limited items, or can you roll sockets now on every item? Because if you can roll sockets on every item, that gives you everything that you need.
Just said.
I can agree with the frustration, I think, where you get a good item and it doesn't have a socket. Immediately, the glee of finding such item is diminished because you know it's useless.
A
Or
weapon based, yeah.
so, like when I was mentioning before about that Kane's, hat or whatever it happened to be, when that rolls, and not only did it not have primary stats, but it didn't have a socket, it was complete garbage. I mean, it would have been garbage regardless of whether or not it could have had a socket, but not having a socket made it worse. The same thing with weapons. I don't think I've gravitated towards a weapon that didn't have a socket because it could be made, 10 or 15 times more powerful, especially when you're leveling too, and you could just throw a gigantic ruby in it and just go to town. Um, I think because they are in the game, they become, just like with anything else, it's the path of least resistance. They become the best way to go about augmenting your character quickly and effectively. And without them, in some ways, it would be nice to kind of see them go because then you would judge an item based on the roles that it has as opposed to just what it happens to be lacking. Um, but I don't foresee any way that they could do it. I don't think that you can kind of put that beast back in its cage anymore.
Yeah, you
Once it
can't really remove it because people
right,
are used to seeing it, and I mean, and it's tough, like even for weapons, because you get four primary stats. So if a socket's already guaranteed. The damage range, roll of elemental or whatever damage, that's your second roll. So now you only have two stats, which one of those is going to be your main stat, because otherwise you won't use a weapon without a main stat. So now you basically have one random affix that you can roll on a weapon, and it's kind of like it's very limits you to what you can get. Like you can't get an item that has reduced resource cost and cooldown reduction on it, because that's going to take up, you're going to do a whole bunch less damage because you're losing like 500 to 750 of your main stat roll on it. So
And you've got IAS, and you've got splash
yeah.
damage, and you've got plus damage to specific skills.
Yep.
Of course, you want there to be choices. If you can get an item that has every good stat on it, then what's the point,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I'd at least like to be able to choose, realistically, of having between, two affixes or something, because like I'd like something like cooldown reduction and splash damage or something, but no, it's like a socket, no matter what, is going to be doing more damage than just about, everything else that's on there. So that
right.
just reels me down to one roll that I'm looking for. And most of the time when I get an item, if it doesn't roll a socket, I'm rolling it for a socket. I'm not trying to roll it for any other, damage point. So.
Right. Well, I think maybe the conversation too is not necessarily removing gems, but like what gems do. You're so pigeonholed into the additional crit damage or the additional damage themselves that you would need to have them to be more effective, as opposed to, Flux, you had brought up additional skill damage. And we're going way, way back. We're going to the original, D3 version. You're talking about runes that augmented skills, but what if there were gems that could increase damage of skills as opposed to just flat damage? And then you could possibly divvy up builds and start gemming for what you ultimately want. And I know that's a way more complex system, and there'd be a lot more facets that I personally don't want to think about because I'm not working for them. But something like that where it would feel like less of a pigeonholing, and more of a option to kind of start to diversify your character even further.
I mean, that would be something like bringing back jewels basically from D2,
Yeah,
but the problem that you come with that is now it's this whole, we already have limited inventory, and stash space. So if you're now having different skills that add, or different items that are going to add towards different skills, you've got every single skill times six, six classes. So now you've basically got a whole tab that's going to be filled with all of these augments for weapons or something else, and it's it's tough, I think. And having those, it's the same thing. Even people want runestones back or whatever from D2, but I mean, runestones were already a bad inventory nightmare, from D2, and it's going to be just as bad because it's basically what the legendary crafting materials are now. you've got an inventory filled of 20 different things on there that you might not be using. But
So that's why we can't have nice things.
yeah,
And moo. This is your host Flux. This is the end of part one of the show. Part two will be posted later this week. It's about the same length. In part two, we talk about gambling and incentives to do full clears instead of just rushing to get to everything, like is currently incentivized in the game. We trade some Nephilim Rift stories, what we like about them, what we can see improved, and we get into a big debate about character balance and builds. If there's new builds in Reaper of Souls, which class is the strongest? If the Templar needs a little more work still, and not Templar, Crusader, same thing. And build changing legendaries and a listing of features of what we want to see in the upcoming Reaper of Souls patch, which will almost certainly be posted before I post this. No matter when I post this, it will always be posted 1 minute before it because Blizzard is tricky that way. And thanks for listening. And this is a Diablo 3 podcast, and we're online at diabloinkgamers.com. Moo.